guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very exciting video. It is a video that I want to film for ages because it does give me an excuse to talk about just my absolute favorite books, the books that got me into reading, the books that I know are trash but I personally love, and hopefully, I don't know, just to talk about these books because they're just my favorite books of all time. And I do hopefully know that this list will be changing throughout the years, but as of right now, these are my top favorite books of all time, the ones that I think everyone should read. I think there's a little bit of everything for everyone here, so without any further ado, let's just go. I want to apologize if there's any background noise because I live in a city. It's gonna happen. I'm sorry. So yeah, let's just get right into the first book. So the first book that I have, these are in no particular order, by the way. I just kind of grabbed my favorite books. So the first book series, I guess, that I want to recommend is Attack on Titan. This is the omnibus version, by the way, and this is a manga that is by Hajime Isayama. This is what got me into both anime and manga. It is a great starting point for that. Like, I honestly know so many people who've also just gotten into manga and anime because of this series, and it is so good. It is dark fantasy. It is so good. Like, I feel like you should go into it not knowing anything, and like honestly not knowing anything, because it just makes the story so much fun and so incredible, and it is epic and so dark, and it is great. Like, the characters are insane. You will cry. They're just so good. And also I really recommend the anime as well. Like, it is so good, unlike anything else I've ever seen portrayed in media, and it's just so cool. Like, look at this, look at that, and it's good. It's really good. But yeah, Attack on Titan. Also, the anime recently finished, so like you can totally binge watch it now because I couldn't. I waited years and years for it to like fully be complete to do that. So yeah, the next book that I want to mention is book series, really. It's a YA fantasy series that I hear no one talk about. It is indie published, so let's try to show some love for her. That is Sora's Quest by T.L. Schreffler. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right, but it is Sora's Quest by T.L. Schreffler, and it is the first book in the Cat's Eye Chronicles. Honestly, I recommend the whole series. It is so good. It is YA fantasy, but it is clean. It is sweet, it is epic, it is so easy but fun and enjoyable, and oh, it's so good. It's one of my favorite fantasy series out there for YA, or just in general fantasy. It is so good, and honestly, it was the only books that I was reading when I was in a reading slump, so like these don't count for me. And I've reread these, honestly, I want to say like 5 times. I've reread the series 5 times, guys. Like, it is so good. This is how much I adore this world. Follow Sora Fallcrest as she turns 17, and she basically wants adventure, and she can't really do that because she is part of the nobility, and she is expected to marry and just choose a husband and marry, basically. And we see, as on her 17th birthday, she has a plan to run away, but instead she gets kidnapped by this very handsome dark assassin guy who ends up going on the run with, and it is so fun from there. There's so much adventure, and she ends up learning about different species that are living in her world, and she doesn't really believe in magic yet, but she's gonna have to soon, and it is just so much fun. And if you guys want slow burn romance in fantasy, this is the series to pick up. Like, 3 books in, and that's when we start getting a little bit of romance, like proper romance. And it is so good. It is so good. And I honestly recommend you guys to pick it up now, I guess. Like, you're allowed to pick it up now, basically because the 6th book is out finally, which was supposed to be published in like 2018 or something like that. And I was waiting 2017, but it didn't actually end up getting published till 2023. So, and I've yet to read it. I know it's disgusting, but I will at some point read it. But yes, I definitely recommend this. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I will never stop recommending this. This is just such a fun YA fantasy. It's easy, it's fun, it's light, it's just so good. I really want everyone to read it. And yeah, the next book that I have to recommend is probably no surprise in the booktube community, I guess. It is a book by Sarah J Maas, which obviously I feel like everyone knows at this point, and it is Throne of Glass. I specifically chose this one because although I am a fan of most of her work, I don't love her other series like ACOTAR and Crescent City. I don't love them as much as I love the Throne of Glass series, because the Throne of Glass series very much is that epic fantasy, YA fantasy or new adult fantasy, and it is so good. And it's also one of the first ones that I read, and I just remember reading it at midnight, kind of like when I was really young, and I just read it at midnight and I loved it so much. And like, if you're gonna pick up any of the Sarah J Maas books, the only one that's actually finished, but it is just her best, you know? It's just the best one out there. I definitely recommend. And on top of that, like, it's finished, so you can definitely binge read them, which is what I did. And it's just so much fun. I feel like I don't really need to get a synopsis for this book because, like, it's all over BookTube, it's all over Book Talk, it's everywhere. All of her books are everywhere, and I don't feel like giving a synopsis for this. Like, there's no point, really. It's fun. It's YA fantasy. The next books that I want to recommend, the next series, basically. I feel like I'm kind of cheating on this because I'm kind of basically recommending series rather than books. But it's fine. It's fine. We're just going to go with it. The next ones that I want to recommend are from the Shadow of the Wind books. I think they're called the Cemetery of Library? No, the Cemetery of Books series. I don't know. They're by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, which is a Spanish author, and he is so good. So he's mostly known for Shadow of the Wind, but that book actually has a few more in that series. Like, there's 4 in total, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Shadow of the Wind, but I do definitely recommend you continue, full stop. Like, the whole series is incredible, but my favorite ones were definitely Angel's Game. I read this at such a hard time in my life, and it was so good. It was so captivating. I remember loving every single page of it, and I don't generally enjoy these types of books, like historical fiction that borders on, I don't know if it's psychological or like borders on magical realism, but you're not quite sure what's happening. It was just so good, and I loved it so much. In this one, we follow David Martin, who is an aspiring author, and basically, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say because it is so good to not really know what the hell is happening. And I really, really want people to read this one more. And I also, from the same series, in the same universe, basically recommend the 4th book, which is The Labyrinth of Spirits. This is a ginormous book, but it is so good. It is all so good. It wraps up, it doesn't really wrap up much, but it does. This kind of is the concluding novel to all these books. There are standalone novels. Basically, this whole series they are standalone novels, but they're not, like, you can read them out of order, but I wouldn't really think that that's what you should do, because they basically all follow, kind of spotlight on a certain character, and we follow their past, their present, their future. It's just a weird mix, and it's just so good. If you want historical fiction set in Spain, if you want those cozy vibes of thriller, cozy mystery kind of vibes that there's kind of really dark topics also, I definitely recommend you guys check it out. It is so good. I love it so much. And this was actually something that I read for the first time last year, and I adored it so much. Like, I have not been able to stop thinking about it since, and it was a huge surprise because I wasn't the biggest fan of Carlos Ruiz Zafón because I've read some of his other books, and didn't enjoy them that much. But these ones, they're definitely just beyond comparison. Like, they're the best. I feel like this next book that I want to kind of say is one of my favorites is kind of very basic to say is one of my favorites, but I don't care. It's my channel. I get to say whatever I want and just decide the books that I want. So the next one is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Look at this book. Like, it is stunning, and it's got illustrations throughout it. I feel like this is very basic to say, but it is a classic, and it is a classic for a reason. I mean, it could be because I just love the 2005 adaptation and basically any adaptation ever made of this film, but I do honestly really love these Regency romance novels. I love how much it impacted the world of this book, basically, because it is still one of the better works out there. It is still one of the most known works of literature out there, and I applaud it for that. I do really, really, really enjoy it. Also, it's just so good. Like, how can you not like Mr. Darcy? I'm sorry, how can you not? And I feel like everyone finds themselves kind of what's the word? ¿Cómo se dice? I feel like there's a lot of girls who see themselves in Elizabeth Bennet as well, and hope to God that someday they'll find also their own Mr. Darcy. And yeah, I love it. I love it so much, especially like the letter that he writes her. It's just so good, and I can quote most of it because I've seen the movie so many times. I love it so much. My battery is running, my phone is running out of battery, but we're gonna still go through and power through. The next book that I want to talk about is La Guillotina by Simone van der Vogt, who is from Holland, so I'm sorry. I love this book so much. It is one of those books that I had to read for class, for school, and I was shocked at how good it was, at how much I enjoyed it. It was also optional, but I was kind of like trying to get the reading done early, and I remember absolutely adoring it. I was kind of shocked that I liked it so much because I don't tend to like books for school basically, and this one I did really enjoy. And it is set in Paris 1789, which is during the French Revolution, and we follow Sandrine de Villaucourt. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, but anyway, we follow Sandrine, and she is from the noble family. She's from a noble family, and it's basically how her life basically gets turned upside down. How she goes from being a privileged young lady and who has to go into hiding because they are killing aristocrats left and right, and how slowly everyone who was pro-revolution kind of ends up kind of being scared of their own creation, and how it just ends up being a complete bloodbath. And yeah, I really like this book. I really, really, really wish it was talked about more. I think it is a great YA historical fiction. There's a little bit of romance in it too. Like, it's just a good book. I really wish people knew about it more, and more people picked it up and liked it. Because, I mean, also look at the cover. It took me a while to get it, but once you get it, like, think about the French Revolution and see if you can get what the cover is, because I couldn't get it for the longest time. Next book that I want to talk about is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I say it's by Patrick Ness, but he actually just took the idea from Siobhan Down, who's another author who died before she could finish properly writing the book, and he took her idea and basically came up with the book that I have now in my hands. And there is also a movie, which is really good, by the way, and I watched the movie first without realizing there was a book, but then obviously I read the book and I really, really enjoyed it. It is about this young boy called Connor, and his mother is dying of cancer, and it's just how he's dealing with it basically. So a monster comes at night and he tells him these creepy little stories, and he's supposed to learn a lesson from them. And oh my god, it is so good. Like, the movie's great and it makes you cry. This book is also extremely good. I was shocked that it made me cry, but it did. I wasn't expecting to cry, but it really just, it tugs on your heartstrings. It makes you feel for this little boy who is having such a hard time in his life, and it's just so sad. It is so sad, but it's also just so well done, and I just love it to bits. I really am due for a reread though, for the longest time. Another book that I really want to talk about is one of the first YA fantasy books that I ever read, like really, really one of the first ones that I read, and I fell head over heels in love with it. It made me fall in love with these darker characters, made me realize that fantasy could be fun, and I just loved it. And it is probably not the best work of literature out there, but it is one of my favorites, and it's what got me into reading fantasy YA basically, and that is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I know this doesn't have the best rep anywhere, but I adore it. It is basically enemies to lovers. It is so good. I love it. But it is a retelling of 100 Arabian Nights, and so there's a king who murders his bride every morning, who gets married and kills a bride every day. So our main character, Shazi, she volunteers, and he's kind of like, why would you volunteer to die? And she goes, well, because I kind of want to kill you. So her objective is to kill him, and so it's how she ends up maybe doing that or not. Or like, I mean, it's fantasy romance, so I pretty much feel like people will get that there's romance in it. But it's very light on the romance. I mean, it's very light on the fantasy. At least in this book, in the second book, there is a lot more fantasy elements to it, but in this one there isn't that many. But it's just so good. I really do love Renee Ahdieh's writing. I loved the characters she created here. It's just so much fun. It's just a fun time, and I feel like this book needs a little bit more love than it has. I mean, it doesn't. It's pretty popular on its own. Another one is kind of also, again, within the sphere of, I went through a YA dystopian era, which I feel like everyone did at some point, and we all had our favorite dystopian books. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Hunger Games back then. Like, they were okay, but I had never seen the movies, I think. But I got into those books very late, so they weren't really a part of like me loving dystopia. Instead I read Divergent, and I read these books, which are some of my favorites now, and it is The 100. I have not watched the TV show. I know I have to, but I have not yet. I'll remedy that at some point, but I do know for a fact that Bellark, is that what it's called? The ship name, Bellark. If you're a fan of the 100 TV show and you want Bellark to be a thing, read the books. It's a thing here. It's a thing here, and it is so good. I feel like I don't really need to say the premise of these books, except that it is very different to the show, and that I love the books so much. It is a fun, goofy, dystopian time. It is teenagers running around wild on Earth, like, that's been left alone for years. So it's a fun time. I really enjoy these books. I find them super fun. They're very addictive. They're very quick and easy reads, and they're great for getting you out of a slump as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend. And I know it's like the TV show, which is funny because like this character, Finn, I think his name is, doesn't exist in the books. But whatever. The next book that I want to recommend is one that I actually read really recently. It has skyrocketed into one of my favorite books of all time, mainly just because I love this character so much, and that is Rebel Rising, and it is by Beth Revis, and this is part of the Star Wars universe, and it is canon with the Star Wars universe. So basically, Star Wars Rogue One is my favorite movie of all time. Not my favorite movie of all time, it's my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. Definitely, like, hands down, it is the best Star Wars movie, and you cannot change my mind on that. But this book specifically tells you basically everything that happens between the first chapters of the main character's life. So if you know about Rogue One, I feel like you'll definitely, and you like Rogue One, you'll definitely like this book because it gives a lot of context on our main character's life. What was her name? On Jyn Erso, and it is so much, it's so good, and I loved the character depth. I love how we got to see basically everything that we were missing in the movie, that chunk where it goes to black and where then we just wake up and she's in a prison. We get to see how she got there. We get to see everything she was doing, and it is so interesting and good, and I was eating this up. I loved it so much. And also the audiobook is very good for this, like it has sound effects and everything. I just really recommend if you liked the movie and want to know more about Jyn Erso, here you go, read this. It is so good. I loved it. It's so good. If you don't like Star Wars, I feel like you can definitely read it as well, but I feel like you won't also get enough out of it. Okay, next book is I feel like it's a YA or middle grade, but it is Wander by R.J. Palacio. This book, it is so good. It pulls at your heartstrings and almost made me cry a few times. This world where Augie lives, I just adore this book so much. It is one of my favorite books. I feel like everyone should read it. I feel like it's required reading for every kid who's basically 10 years old or younger. I adore this book with every fiber of my heart. It is, again, one of those first books that I read that wasn't like comics or anything stupid, basically, or that wasn't comics, basically. You've like the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books. It is one of those first novels that I read, basically, and I adored it so much. I have a distinct memory of my family watching TV in the sitting room and me being in my room reading this because I loved it so much. And in this book, if you are not familiar, we follow Augie, who has a disfigurement in his face, and so he doesn't look like everyone else, and it is his first time attending public school, and we basically follow him and like the trials that he goes through, basically. And not only Augie, but we get the perspective of everyone around him and how he does and doesn't affect certain parts of their lives, and how sometimes it is all revolving around him and how sometimes it isn't. And it's just heartwarming. It's a good story about friendship, about accepting yourself, about being brave, and just it is so good. It is so good, and I feel like it has a very important message that everyone should take away something from it. It is so good. Next book that I've got is a classic, and it is a classic that I feel like doesn't get enough attention. Why? Because it is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Now, Anne Bronte is one of the Bronte sisters. Her sisters, Emily and Charlotte, are very well known for their works, respectively. I think it's Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. Yeah, well, anyway, they wrote Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, which have so much love and so much hype, and they're the ones that everyone knows. But what about Anne Bronte? Like, she has this amazing book that I honestly feel like is so well done that I feel like everyone should read as well. Like, this should be just as high up there as Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, because it is so good. I'll just read the back because that'll explain it better than anything. The story bravely explored the position of women, marital abuse, and feminism in Victorian society. It is also written as a series of letters of this woman pouring her heart and soul out to someone. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read this, so I'm sorry if I'm a little vague, but I remember loving it. And it is told within letters, which she writes, and she kind of retells us why she's in the position she is in right now, and how she escaped an abusive marriage, and how she decided that I can't be here anymore, like it has to change. And it's so good, and I really like it, and I wish it got just as much hype as Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, which are both great books. I've read them both. They're both, well, Wuthering Heights, was kind of just weird. I don't get it. I think I don't get it. But Jane Eyre is also one of my favorites. But this one tops it, and I just feel like everyone should read it as well. Like, if you like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, that's great. Read this one too. It is also insanely good, and like, Anne deserves more recognition, you know? Because like, she is one of the Bronte sisters, but let's give a little bit more love to her. The next book that I have is also a part of a series that I feel like everyone knows about, kind of, but it is just one of my favorites. It is Game of Thrones. Basically, A Song of Ice and Fire. This is the first book, A Game of Thrones. I love this series. Epic fantasy, yes. Characters that are just so well thought out, that have so distinct voices, that are, none of them are good, none of them are bad, they're just all fighting for the throne. It is so good. If you like the TV show, read the books. Like, I know there isn't a 5th book out yet, or is it the 6th book? I know we don't know when the next book is coming out, but for what it's worth, I do feel like it is just a great series to read anyway. I mean, like, yeah, there isn't really an ending, but you do get so much more out of the story reading the books. Like, there's just a lot more that happens in the books. And there's things that literally, I've seen the TV show. I saw the whole thing before I read all the books, and I had my jaw dropping because there's some things, elements that are in the books that are just not done in the TV show, which I get, I understand it, but oh my god, they are so good. There's like plot twists, there's people coming from the dead, and just like, oh, it's so good, it's so good. I really wish people read the books more. Like, yeah, the TV show's great, at least until a certain point, but the books are also good, and I feel like it's just a staple in fantasy, and it is beloved for a reason, and I am one of those people who loves it just as much. The next 2 books are honestly all YA fantasy, so if that's not your thing, I am sorry. But it is my thing. It is very much my thing, and I went on a roll of reading YA fantasy. So my next favorite book that I'm going to talk about is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Yes, she has gotten tons of attention for her other series, which is Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which is also setting in the same kind of universe world as the Caraval trilogy. But y'all, for me, Caraval is still my favorite. Like, I do feel like I need to reread Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I do think Caraval for me is better. I'm sorry. I just adore it so much more. It is so much more fun. I love the characters a lot more. They're a lot less, in my mind, from what I can remember, a lot nicer. I just adore these characters. I love the world, the setting of Caraval, this magical circus kind of that's dangerous, and there's a mystery that I didn't see coming, like, even though it is explicitly told. I feel like the plot twist in this, yeah, it's predictable, and at the same time I couldn't see it coming, and I like feel it's like I know there's a plot twist coming that I should be able to know where it is and where it's from. I just can't tell it, and it just keeps me on my toes, and every time I read it I kind of forget and then don't forget, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Anyway, I'm not sure if I'm explaining my love for this series so much, but it is so good. I feel like people who read the Once Upon a Broken Heart books and haven't read the Caraval trilogy are missing out. Like, you already know you like Stephanie Garber's writing, so read Caraval as well. Like, it is so good as well, and I just really enjoyed the romance in here too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the romance is also very cute in here, and I do enjoy it quite a bit. And the last book that I want to talk about is Chain of Cold by Cassandra Clare. Now, I do admit that I'm not the biggest fan of the Shadowhunter world until I got to these books. Like, they were okay, but these books, these Last Hour trilogy, I haven't read the last one yet, although I haven't heard the best things about that one, but Chain of Iron and Chain of Gold definitely changed that. I was like, okay, yes, I'm invested in these characters. I love these characters. I love this world that they're set in, and it just, the weird mix of Regency, well, it's not really Regency, anyway, whatever time period this is set in, and the mix of that between them having to be shadow hunters as well, and also like the society rules, it just makes for a great combo that is delicious, that is exquisite, and it is so good, and I really enjoyed them so much. Also, these covers are probably the most stunning out of all of her books. Like, come on. Cordelia, definitely one of my favorites. All the characters in this are basically kind of like my favorite characters out of the whole Shadowhunter series, and that's hard because I used to be in love with Jace so bad, but I definitely feel like Cassandra Clare, this is her best trilogy out there. I mean, I've read all of them, and probably maybe the Infernal Devices made me find my love again for the Shadowhunter universe that I had lost hope in after reading, what was it, City of Glass? I was kind of done with the Shadowhunters universe after that, but This book reignited it, and I am so glad that it did, and I adore it with every fiber of my being. Like, I love these books so much. So hopefully you guys liked this video. Anyone who's watching, I am just so happy that I got to talk and gush about my favorite books, and hopefully you guys found kind of like a nice little mix. You guys found maybe a book you're interested in, maybe brought to light some classics that weren't really known, or maybe you just enjoyed the video, I don't know. But yeah, that concludes kind of like my list of all-time favorite books. Now, I do think that the list will change over time, but as of right now, these are my favorite books, and I couldn't be happier about it, and I am so thankful that I can have these books in my life, that I've read these, and that I love these, and that hopefully more people pick up these books because of it. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Thank you for bye.